Hey, what's going on, everybody? We have Tommy Ashley here, back again. Tommy, I had to bring you on here. Covers the Tar Heels for Inside Carolina, the 24/7 Sports Network. Big news with Bill Belichick taking over there, the football program. I know you were at the press conference. I want to get your overall takeaways of everything that's just kind of happened and what this kind of means for UNC football, and maybe your thoughts on the press conference there.
Yeah, I'll start with the press conference. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, and I've seen a lot of big press conferences, and I'm not quite sure I've seen one as big as what we just saw today in the Blue Zone at Keenan Stadium. It was packed. There were everybody that is somebody that covers this stuff was there, local, regional, state, national, and you see Marty Smith doing the Pat McAfee show live right there, standing right here, beside us talking and walking around. And you got all the ESPN people, of course, and then you have all the big wigs and the heavy hitters on Carolina football side, and so it was a scene for sure. And for what it does shows to me is yes, it's a scene and everybody wants to be seen, and you know how that is. And I was there and all that kind of stuff. But the commitment that North Carolina football has made to get in the game is the biggest thing. And we've talked about that on a couple podcasts over the last couple of days. Is yes, Big Bill Belichick is a gigantic name, and that is part of all this. But the part that folks need to also realize, especially those that care about North Carolina, is the commitment aspect of this. And it's not been seen from Carolina. They've talked a good game for a while. I mean, Butch Davis was hired 20 years ago, close to it. And you thought Carolina was going to go all in, quote unquote, all in on that. And we see how that worked out. But now you have Belichick sort of held their feet to the fire and said, if I'm going to do this, we're going to do it the right way on a level that we can compete. North Carolina said, all right, we're good. And we'll see how it works out. But yeah, just an incredible scene today. I mean, absolutely incredible in Chapel Hill.
Yeah, and I heard you got a question in there. That was good. I had a chance to watch that. It's some of the same stuff that you're talking about, different with the Miami program. But when Mario Cristobal was hired, again, totally different, but in a little bit of relation into what you're saying about the commitment, because it just wasn't about spending money on a head coach, and that's probably what you're seeing there. What do you think, Tommy? What do you think are realistic expectations with all this? And and I know it is interesting. You're talking about big names there, and I've been kind of watching shows all day long, and certainly our fans, the Miami Hurricanes fans on Inside the U, have been talking about this and what this all means. What do you think is realistic expectations, or how are people receiving it there in Chapel Hill, the Tar Heel fans?
I think wins and losses, Chris, is tough to go there because we don't know what the roster is going to look like. And we talked about that going into the season. Is like going into this past season, Carolina's toughest games were Florida State, maybe Georgia Tech, maybe NC State, and we see how Florida State turned out, and that was one of the easiest games of the year. So, looking at North Carolina's schedule in the old way of looking at it, you look and say, well, damn, that's an easy schedule. They got Clemson, and that's about it. And, if they can get past the first couple games and get some momentum, and then you got opportunity there. And so I think expectations for me as a guy that covers this stuff like you do is I want to see Carolina play good football. And I think that is something we'll see. I didn't say winning football, right? I said good football, not silly mistakes, not poor fundamentals, not poor clock management from the coaching staff. All these type things that cause losses, and we see them. We see them with Miami. We see them across the country. And so my expectations are to see that. Now, how does that translate to wins in the ACC? Well, I look at SMU. SMU comes into the conference and they say, we don't want any of your money. We just want a seat at the table. And then they go get what they need to get money wise, and they're in the playoff, which is incredible to me. But it also shows me that, hey, you can take this approach financially and you can get to where you need to get. And the ACC is, quite frankly, an easier platform to do it. And so I will say I don't think Carolina is ponying up all the money they're ponying up and getting into the game this deep to win 8 games. 8-4 is what is that? An average season now. I just can't see that being the expectation. But you also don't want to say, well, they're going to win 12 because you have no idea what the roster is going to look like at this point. What are we, mid-December? And so I'll wait and see, but I'll be shocked if they're not significantly better football team than they have been.
And look, Miami and North Carolina, they're not on the schedule next year on the regular season. They are on the schedule in 26. But I think with what you said with SMU, I think from Miami standpoint, look with what North Carolina did, and we'll see how the rosters shape up. I think that's such a big point, Tommy, with all these teams. How it's going to look, and I think if you needed that reminder, it's what happened to Florida State. Just how quickly that turned around. I think that should be a red flag, or definitely a cautionary tale for every program in the country, really, how quickly things can get turned around or how it can go the other way. But I think Miami, with North Carolina, with what they're doing, I think certainly a team like that, a program like that now with this move, it can put them in the mix. And I think Miami, it's just another one of these teams that certainly Miami's going to have to take in consideration if they're going to try to get to that ACC title game, as we saw this year. And Tommy, one of these things that was interesting about this year is those top teams didn't play each other. So, and during the regular season, I keep thinking about this with the ACC, adding Bill to it, and you probably agree, but just and I know where the ACC is nationally in terms of a conference, SEC, Big Ten, and ACC is trying to find its way. I think this, provides some credibility to the conference. I think that's great to have a coach like this in here with that kind of resume and certainly name recognition and the way they play, the style of play that you're talking about, if they can kind of get things going there. Roster wise, with where this team is and some portal, maybe some keys in the portal, some key additions, some positions that Bill's definitely and his staff is definitely going to have to address to have a successful season. How does it kind of look for you at this point here, before the bowl game?
Yeah, I mean, where did it start with Miami, right? How did Miami get significantly better this year? They got Cam Ward.
Yeah, it's a huge difference. I mean, it's just a huge difference.
And that's the thing, and I think that's a key point for North Carolina. So that would be my first spot is get significantly better at quarterback, get a game changer at quarterback. Jacoby Criswell, I assume he'll be here. He's not bad, but he's not going to win you a ton of games. We saw that. So I start there. But also, how do these other teams? What was the difference? And we talked about Florida State. What was the difference in Florida State from last year when they were 13-0 versus this year? They had studs on the defensive line, and they had studs on the offensive line. And I think for Carolina, we saw the center from Georgia, Austin Blasky. He went in the portal Monday, and he got out of the portal yesterday. After the news, Aiden Banfield, a guard, a true freshman guard, another stud, potential stud, got out of the portal today. And so you've got to be able to build from the outside in or from the inside out in college football, especially. And I think that's where they'll look mostly. Look, if you can't protect the passer, I don't care how good anybody else is, if your guy's running for his life, unless he's one of the elite guys that we've seen. And so that's first. Quarterback, trenches, and then you go get a top flight wide receiver for North Carolina. And then you cooking on the offense. And then on the defense, you want to be good on all three levels. I think the thing is, Chris, and this is what's interesting, and there were some players. There was a couple players there today, one of which is a big name currently in the portal, is that you have a clean slate completely, I think, with an NFL coach that is one on the highest level and that has coached probably the best quarterback that ever did it. Okay, so he understands talent. And as a defensive coordinator, he coached Lawrence Taylor. And then you have Julius Peppers sitting there who is supporting Belichick. So if you are a player that wants to be coached by the best, then there's your opportunity. And not only that, they understand what it takes to make these guys perform. And so It's going to be crazy. I mean, you know how covering this stuff is. We have been nonstop since Mac Brown was fired that Monday after he told Evan Rogers, one of our reporters, that he was definitely coming back. And it has been nonstop up until this point. We'll have to find out who they have defensive, offensive coordinators, fill out the staff. Freddie Kitchens will be on the staff. And then it's all about the players. And I don't even know how to quantify the expectations that we talked about a minute ago because I just don't know how it all shake out. But if you could bottle the excitement that's in Keenan, especially given how the year ended versus now that was in the Keenan Football Center or the Blue Zone today, it is absolutely incredible, this flip of switch. Um, and you mentioned the bowl game. That was a great question, and I don't want to run too long on you, but somebody asked, how do you evaluate the returning talent? You know, do you look at them on tape or whatever? He was like, they're out there practicing for the bowl game. And these guys are basically auditioning for one of the greatest to ever do it. And so there's some pressure there on the players, but it's also on the coaching staff to identify and to start building now. And then you look in the portal and say, well, we don't have this on the team. Let's go get somebody. So it's a crazy time in college football. You know that.
Yeah, and my takeaway is just watching the press conference, and you hear a little bit of the two sides of this decision by North Carolina, by Bill, and you hear the other side, the negatives or the doubters. And I felt like watching this press conference, my takeaways are there are a lot of positives for this hire, and I think you could see how this could work out definitely at a high level, the way I'm looking at it, and that's why I wanted to bring you on and kind of get your take on all this. And you touched on something earlier, Tommy, that stood out to me, and I think I think you are going to see this when you talked about the you want to see them play good ball basically and kind of be clean on certain areas. And I think one of the things that you're touched on just recently here with Bill and is they're going to be well coached and they're going to know what to do and how to do it and all these things. And there are times at the college level you just don't see that level of coaching in general. It's just a different game, and it's not just what Bill did in the NFL. If you watch any NFL game, it's just a little bit different on the way it's coached, taught, and the way you go after strengths and weaknesses and things like that. And I think he's going to bring that immediately. I think he's immediately going to know. And I know it is up to, personnel is going to be a huge thing and how the staff rounds out everything out. But I think there's definitely reasons to be encouraged if you're a Tar Heel fan. And again, fan of the ACC and in general, ACC football, I think this is just a huge deal. Defensively, Tommy, that side of the ball, Bill's obviously great at that and his knowledge there. But with what we've seen with UNC football, and you touched on kind of years that it's gone on, and Miami's had this long job with this 10-win thing since 97, just the 10-win season for the Tar Heels over that time. But defensively, what kind of impact do you think defensively that this can bring to, as you mentioned, all three units obviously up front makes a huge difference?
Yeah. I mean, when you look at it, talking about the coaching aspect of it, we've covered Carolina and we've seen and we've questioned whether or not they're getting the correct coaching. And so, and when Ted Monachino was hired, we know he knows what he's doing. And the defensive line got better. They weren't great, but there's still some issues. So we'll see how that all shakes out. But now it's on the players. And for Carolina I know the labels. They've heard the labels that Carolina's been soft or whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's tough to call a 6'6", 330-pound man beast a soft guy, but you play that way sometimes and you see it. And so I think that'll be gone immediately out of this. There's not going to be any more of that allowed. And Jason Staples and I also always say you get what you allow. And then what you allow, you see on Saturdays. And so immediately you're going to see that change. Does it translate to wins? I don't know. We'll find out. But to your point, they've got to get better defensively. And I just don't see how you cannot get better defensively. And now with the portal, with NIL, as you well know, I don't have to develop some kid. I can just go buy one, basically. And I don't like that. I freely admit I hate the new way of doing things, but it is what it is. And Carolina said, we're all in on it. So let's ride. So guys are going to have to play and perform, or they're not going to play, or they're not going to perform, and they're not going to be on the team. And that's the difference, I think, that we'll see with Belichick, because there's no way that this guy came to Carolina, agreed to all these terms, asked for all these terms, and is going to watch mediocre football. To your point earlier about the negatives and the naysayers, I get all that. He's older, whatever. But for North Carolina, I'd like somebody to tell me what the negative is. What is the negative for North Carolina? That they go back to winning 6 ball games a year, 8 ball games a year? And I'm just being honest, and people don't like it when I say it. The upside for North Carolina so far outweighs any negativeness. It's not even close. And that is the part of this that I want to see how it shakes out. Because if it doesn't work out, but I tell you what, if Bill Belichick wasn't announced today versus whoever else that it would have gotten if this fell through, then you're talking about some negatives, especially in this new era. So I think they've done well to position themselves, and I think Belichick knows ball enough to be able to put it together. How it shakes out, wins and losses, Chris, we'll have to see. I've seen better football teams get drugged all the time, and I keep hearing about how great Alabama is, and Oklahoma beat the brakes off of Alabama. It's college football. You never know what you're going to get. And but I'd like to be able to say, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know that we were in the right place. And I feel like Carolina's accomplished that with this hire.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting talking about Alabama. We've certainly heard a lot about Alabama over the last couple of weeks after the playoff rankings with Miami there. I want to wrap this up. I know I want to keep this tight, Tommy. Your time's valuable here. One of the things that transfer portal, certainly that's a major focal point for this offseason moves here for North Carolina. But looking ahead to 2026 recruiting, it's very talented. They got 7 guys in the state of North Carolina ranked in the top 100. There are 2 of them that I've had a chance to see in person. Really like them, although they're committed to other programs. And the quarterback in Faison Brandon committed to Tennessee, the quarterback, and then Kendra Harrison just recently committed to Oregon. Do you see those 2 guys? You touched on some portal guys that re-decided, made different decisions to come back. Do you think those 2 guys, is North Carolina now going to be in the mix? Are they going to be all in on those 2 guys, or how do you see that playing out? And also maybe the recruiting aspect of the other North Carolina guys. And I heard Bill talk about they want to recruit nationally too. Just what do you think about the high school impact this can make, not just the portal?
Yeah, I think what's interesting with that is Brandon going to Tennessee. Carolina, if they can get Bryce Baker in the fold this year, I don't know if Brandon's really a necessity for next year. He's a great player, but we heard today or yesterday that the number 1 quarterback in 2026 wants to get to Carolina to meet Bill Belichick. So you got that. Kendra Harrison is a guy who I can't fault anybody for going to Oregon. I mean, they're going to treat you well. They're going to pay you a lot of money. But Kendra Harrison has been a North Carolina guy for a long time. So given all the whatever's going on with Mac Brown and given all the NIL and all that stuff, he commits to Oregon. And I understand that you can fly your family pretty easily on private jets these days and all that, but Oregon's a long ass way away from North Carolina and your family. And he's going to have the opportunity, and I'm sure he's going to be recruited again by North Carolina to see what he does. As far as other talent, I think, and Belichick spoke to it, as you mentioned, you lock up the state of North Carolina. Mac was great at locking up the state of North Carolina. Now, a lot of that COVID talent, and I say it that way, is that it was just hard to evaluate people, and a lot of those guys didn't shake out. But you have to recruit locally, and the energy that this has created emanating from Chapel Hill is going to make a difference on that end. 2025 guys, maybe you'll have some guys that haven't committed that might commit or think about it or flip or whatever, because there's some still out there. But in 2026, I think those kids are going to be looking at all of this that's going on, and then they're going to see the energy, and they're going to realize the opportunities that they have here in front of them. And North Carolina has committed to the money side of it, because I'll freely admit, and I say this too much, but my children if somebody offered my child $1 million to go play somewhere, and I just pulling $1 million, some of the numbers out there are unbelievable, but they're starting to get more and more accurate. But anyway, if somebody offered me $1 million or one of my children $1 million to go play at their school versus half that or less to go play at this school, where am I going? Unless I'm a legacy, unless I'm a Drake May that has family, so you got to be in the game on that part. But I think ultimately kids, especially the parents of these kids that have grown up like you and I have, where Belichick was the guy, and Belichick and Manning and Brady were winning Super Bowls. I just think you're going to have a lot of guys that may have turned off North Carolina back listening, and I think Faze and Brandon could be one, but I definitely think Kendra Harrison's going to be one of those guys that they're certainly in the ear, and we'll see what happens. And then you can go poach a national guy for maybe a position of need. But I think the area here is North Carolina, Georgia, South Carolina, Virginia. But as you mentioned, I mean, you've got all these other schools, and South Carolina's in the game, Miami's in the game, Clemson has been a little less in the game, but they still get talent. So we'll see what happens.
I think it's obviously fascinating seeing how it all is going to unfold, and I'm sure you're excited. Everyone there, you're touching on that quite a bit. Just the excitement. Again, just it's a team to watch at the very least for Miami. Even though they're not on the schedule, they could play or they could possibly meet or certainly be in contention. We'll see how everything kind of plays out, whether it's recruiting, other transfer targets, or in the standings of getting to the ACC championship game next year. So we'll see how it all plays out, Tommy. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. Yeah, there is a lot of parallels in the sense of the excitement of a new hire. So we'll see how it all plays out, but definitely appreciate your time.
Yeah, indeed. And I'll say this. I hate Carolina not playing Miami. Now, granted, Carolina's had some success against Miami, but Keenan Stadium in 2019 in that Miami game, and as you well know, Carolina Howell completes the pass on 4th and 17, and then they scored a touchdown late. That atmosphere is what it's all about. And I miss those games with Miami. And it's always been a fun rivalry going back. And Carolina's had success in it, so it makes it better. But that's the one thing about this new day and age in conferences and all is these teams don't get to play each other anymore. And hopefully they're going to figure that out a little better, but we'll see. But and also you throw in what's up with the ACC as we get down the road. So lots
Yeah.
changing in college sports, but college football is still the best thing, man. You cannot beat a college football Saturday with a great atmosphere. I mean, I know
Yeah.
Carolina fans are starving for it.
And I think too, with just UNC, I just feel like I have felt like this for a long time, just that it is a potential to have real success. It just hasn't worked out for, as you know, for different reasons. But yeah, the Miami North Carolina thing, that's disappointing. When Miami, when they with the scheduling, they didn't play Virginia Tech, and that rivalry had gone back from Big East, so that was a little bit different. And certainly Virginia Tech, their program is not what it was. But yeah, it's tough, especially in the ACC when it hasn't been just a ton of just rivalries, established that, the Miami, North Carolina one has certainly been entertaining and interesting and fun to look forward to because North Carolina, has come into season certainly with high expectations and certainly good players that we've seen. But Tommy, even if they're not playing on the schedule, I've got to, find a way to talk to you. And I felt like this was
Yeah, man.
a good way to do
Oh,
it.
it's awesome.
And I don't know if we'll be, I'd like to talk to you about hoops, but it's rough over here, so I don't know if we'll get going on that. So,
Well,
but
I'll tell you this: as far as Carolina basketball, obviously everybody's seen what they've struggled. They've played a tough schedule, but this football hire, has taken all the eyeballs off Carolina basketball, and so they can sort of do their thing with less scrutiny. And all this basketball school stuff is not anymore. It's certainly maybe helped out there getting the eyes off of basketball so they can get it figured out. But you're right. That's another thing is, but look, you can call me. We can talk about anything. You just let me know when you
sure.
want me to come on the show. We can shoot the breeze. You're welcome to fly me down to Miami. I'll go out there and I'll sit on the beach and I'll do these podcasts all day, man.
Yeah, whatever it takes to get you
Yeah.
on board. So, all right, Tommy, I know you got work to do. I know there's plenty of people that want to hear what you have to say and more content, which is great to hear. So exciting times for sure. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, man. It's always a pleasure. And everybody stay safe and have a good holiday.